Jessica scrolled through her Instagram feed, her eyes lighting up at the sight of a flashy invite. A new club in town, known for hosting the biggest parties, was throwing an exclusive Valentine's Day event. Only invited guests could attend, and to her surprise, she and her best friend Linda had been personally invited by two rich guys, Mike and Kelvin. Jessica and Linda had met them on Instagram a few weeks ago. Their pages were full of luxury, expensive cars, designer clothes, and vacations in Dubai. Linda, always drawn to the soft life, was immediately excited. "Babe, this is our chance. These guys are the real deal. No stress, just enjoyment," Linda said, shaking Jessica's arm. Jessica hesitated. Something about this seemed too good to be true. But when Kelvin sent a DM saying they would be picked up in a brand new Mercedes-Benz and treated to the best Valentine's experience, she found herself tempted. That evening, the girls got ready, dressing in their best outfits. As they stepped out of the house, a frail old beggar sitting by the roadside looked at Jessica and muttered, "No, follow them, my Pekin. Darkness day their road." Jessica shivered. Linda laughed it off. "A beg, forget that one. Old people and their walla." Jessica nodded, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling. But as the Benz pulled up in front of them, its headlights flashing brightly in the dark, she couldn't ignore the sinking feeling in her stomach. The night was just beginning, but something told her it was a night she would never forget. The car smelled of leather and expensive cologne. Jessica and Linda couldn't help but admire the luxury. Mike sat in the driver's seat, sunglasses on, despite it being nighttime. Kelvin, in the back, poured expensive champagne into crystal glasses. "To a night of love and money," Kelvin toasted. Jessica hesitated, but clinked her glass against Linda's. As they sipped, Kelvin took out a bundle of cash and threw it on Jessica's lap. "Buy yourself something nice," he smirked. Jessica's heart raced. She had never held that much money before. Linda giggled, already stuffing a few notes into her purse. They arrived at a high-end restaurant, where other girls were waiting, all looking equally mesmerized. Expensive meals were served, and the men spent without hesitation. Linda took selfies, updating her Instagram story, flaunting her Valentine's night. As Jessica stood to use the restroom, she passed by a ragged-looking woman at the entrance. The woman grabbed Jessica's hand suddenly, her grip ice-cold. "Money day this world, but no be everything good for chop," she whispered. Jessica pulled her hand away, fear creeping up her spine. She turned to look at Linda, who was busy taking pictures of the food. Jessica wanted to leave, but how could she say no to free luxury? After dinner, Mike and Kelvin announced an after-party at a private mansion. Excited, the girls agreed. The drive was long, leading them out of the city to an estate with high walls and security cameras. The gates opened, revealing a massive mansion with exotic cars parked outside. Loud music boomed from inside, and a group of girls in skimpy outfits laughed near the entrance. Jessica stepped in, admiring the chandelier, the marble floors, and the extravagant decor. But something was strange. One of the doors at the far end of the house was locked, with odd markings on it. Kelvin caught her staring and smirked. "That's a storage room. Nothing important." But Jessica wasn't convinced. The party went on, drinks flowed, and laughter filled the air. Everything seemed normal, until Anita, one of the girls, suddenly gasped and clutched her throat, her eyes wide in terror before she collapsed. The room fell silent. Mike and Kelvin exchanged a look. Then, as if nothing happened, they signaled to one of the men. "Take care of it." Jessica's blood ran cold. The music stopped. The air felt heavy as everyone stared at Anita's lifeless body on the floor. Jessica's heart pounded. Linda, sitting beside her, gripped her hand. "What just happened?" she whispered. One of the men, a huge guy with a scar on his face, bent down and checked Anita's pulse. Then he looked up at Mike and Kelvin and shook his head. "She's gone. Gone. Just like that." Jessica expected someone to panic, to call an ambulance. But instead, Kelvin shrugged. "Take her inside," he said coldly. The huge man lifted Anita like a rag doll and carried her towards the locked room with the strange markings. Jessica's stomach twisted. "This isn't normal," she whispered to Linda. But Linda, still intoxicated by the expensive drinks and money, brushed it off. Maybe she just fainted. Jessica wasn't so sure. As the party continued, she noticed something else. Many of the girls started looking dizzy, their movements sluggish. Some slumped on the couches, barely conscious. Jessica suddenly felt lightheaded too. Her vision blurred. The air smelled strange, almost metallic. She reached for Linda, but before she could say a word, her legs gave out. The last thing she saw before darkness swallowed her was Kelvin's smirking face. Jessica's eyes fluttered open. She was lying on a cold floor. The room was dimly lit, with red candles burning in each corner. She tried to sit up, but her body felt weak. A strange humming sound filled the air. As her vision adjusted, she gasped. She wasn't alone. 5 other girls were lying around her, motionless. Linda was beside her, still unconscious. Their dresses were gone, replaced with red wrappers tied around their chests. Jessica's heart pounded. This wasn't a party. This was a ritual. She struggled to her feet, her head spinning. The room was filled with odd carvings on the walls, bones scattered on the floor, and a large black pot in the center. A door creaked open. Kelvin and Mike stepped in, now dressed in white robes. Behind them, 3 old men with dark beads around their necks followed. Jessica's breath hitched. "What is this?" she demanded. Kelvin smiled. "Relax, beautiful. You're about to be part of something bigger than you." Jessica's blood turned to ice. She grabbed Linda, shaking her. "Wake up. We need to get out of here." Linda stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering. But before Jessica could move further, the 3 old men began chanting. The air thickened, pressing down on her chest. And then, she heard the most chilling words of all. "Tonight, we complete the sacrifice." Jessica fought to stay calm. She looked around for an escape, but the only way out was the door Kelvin and Mike stood in front of. She nudged Linda harder. "Wake up, please." Linda groaned, finally opening her eyes. "Jess, what's going on?" Before Jessica could answer, another girl whimpered. "Where's Anita?" Silence. Jessica's stomach twisted. Anita had collapsed at the party. They had taken her inside. But where was she now? A loud thud came from behind a curtain in the room. Jessica turned sharply, her pulse racing. She took a shaky step towards the curtain. Just as she reached out to pull it back, a hand grabbed her wrist. She yelped, spinning to see Kelvin shaking his head. "Curiosity kills the cat, sweetheart." Mike chuckled darkly. Jessica's hands trembled. Whatever was behind that curtain, they didn't want her to see it, which meant it was something horrifying. Linda, now fully awake, looked around in confusion. "Jess, we need to get out of here." Jessica nodded, gripping her hand. "Now." Jessica took a deep breath. "We need to act like we're still weak," she whispered to Linda. "Wait for the right moment." The old men continued their chanting, their voices growing louder. Jessica forced herself to slump back, pretending to be dizzy. Linda did the same. Mike and Kelvin smirked. "They won't even fight." "Makes it easier," Mike said. The door opened again, and 2 men in black robes walked in, carrying a large clay bowl filled with thick red liquid. Jessica felt bile rise in her throat. Was it blood? She couldn't wait anymore. It was now or never. As the men approached, Jessica suddenly sprang up and kicked the bowl out of their hands. The liquid splashed onto the floor, and chaos erupted. Linda screamed and pushed one of the men. "Run!" Jessica shouted. They ran out of the room, their bare feet slapping against the cold floor. Jessica yanked open the first door she saw, hoping it led outside. Instead, she stepped into a nightmare. It was a small, dark room. The air smelled of death. In the center of the room lay a pile of clothes, women's dresses, jewelry, wigs. Some were torn, some covered in dried blood. Jessica clamped a hand over her mouth. These weren't just any clothes. They belonged to the missing girls. And then she saw it, Anita's handbag. Terror gripped her. She turned to Linda, who had gone pale. "Jess, we have to leave." Jessica nodded. But before they could move, a deep voice echoed from the hallway. "Where do you think you're going?" "Kelvin." Jessica and Linda turned sharply, ready to run in the other direction, only to find Anita standing behind them. But she wasn't scared. She wasn't trying to escape. She was smiling. Jessica's breath caught in her throat. "Anita." Anita tilted her head. "You shouldn't have come here, Jess." Linda gasped. "You're with them." Anita smirked. "You think you were invited here by mistake?" Jessica's stomach dropped. It had been a setup from the beginning. Anita lunged at Jessica, but she dodged, pushing Linda forward. They sprinted down the hallway, their hearts pounding. Kelvin and Mike were right behind them, shouting for the guards. Jessica spotted a staircase and ran up, bursting onto a balcony. Below, the compound stretched out, the high gate locked. They were trapped. But then, headlights flashed outside the gate. A taxi. Jessica's mind raced. Could they make it? Jessica and Linda jumped. They hit the ground hard, but scrambled to their feet. The taxi door opened, and an old man beckoned. Get in." Without thinking, they dove inside. As the car sped off, Jessica looked back. Kelvin and Mike stood at the gate, their eyes glowing red in the darkness. The old man drove in silence. Jessica and Linda panted, their hearts still racing. After a while, Jessica whispered, "Who are you?" The man smiled faintly. "Someone who saves lost souls." They reached town. The driver refused payment and simply said, "Be careful who you follow next time." As the taxi disappeared into the night, Jessica realized they never told him where they were running from. Thank you for watching. Kindly share your thoughts from what you learned from the story. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more.